everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how I upcycled some compact mirrors that I thrifted. So I got these compact mirrors at the thrift store. They came in a pack of 10, and you can see there's a mirror on both sides. I believe one of them has magnification, and the other one is just plain. And there's like a magnetic closure. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways to upcycle these compact mirrors. Now, the first method that I'm going to use is with polymer clay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got a couple of circular cookie cutters here. Now I've chosen the sizes for these based on the size of my compact. You can see this one is about the size of the compact itself, and then this one is a little bit smaller. So the first thing I'm going to do is get some scrap clay and roll it out. Okay, so I've got my clay rolled out here. Now this is just a piece of scrap clay. I'm using scrap clay for this because I'm going to cover up this entire piece of clay anyway. I'm just using it as a base to put my image on. So it doesn't really matter what color it is. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my smaller cookie cutter. Now I will say I rolled this out on a pasta machine using the thickest setting. You don't have to use a pasta machine. If you don't have one, you can use an acrylic roller like this one. But I would highly recommend investing in a pasta machine if you're going to be doing a lot of polymer clay art, because it does save a lot of time. So I'm just going to cut out my circle. I'm using the smaller of the 2 cookie cutters to cut out this circle. Now I'm going to cut out 2 of these, one for each side of the compact. Okay, so you can see here that I've got both of my circles cut out. Now I'm going to create the design on top of these 2 circles. so I've made both of my designs here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and bake these as per the manufacturer's directions. This particular Sculpey bakes at 275. So we're gonna do that. I'm gonna leave them in for about half an hour. And then I'll come back when they're baked. I've got my two pieces out of the oven. They just finished baking. I've waited for them to cool down a little bit. And now I'm going to add a gold border. So you can see I've already cut out 2 gold circles here. I used my larger cutter. This is the one that matches the size of the compact. And now I'm going to attach these pieces to this gold border. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use some liquid clay. This is liquid Sculpey. And we're just gonna apply some of this to the back of the piece here so that we can stick it down to this. So I'm just gonna apply some, and I'm just gonna spread it out. I wanna make sure that it gets all the way out to the edge so that this piece doesn't lift or anything. And now I'm just gonna apply it to the gold, and I'm just gonna make sure that that's centered. And now I'm gonna do the same thing for the other one. I'm gonna spread it out, get it all the way to the edges. And then I'm just gonna put that down onto the gold and make sure that it's centered. Okay, so now I'm just gonna press those down pretty firmly. All right, so now that we've attached those 2 pieces, I'm gonna take this little piece of gold and I'm just gonna use it to add some embellishments to this border to make it look a little nicer. So I'm gonna do that, and then we will bake this a second time, and I will bake it for probably about 15 to 20 minutes at the same temperature that I did the first time. Finished up sculpting the border, and so now I'm going to go ahead and bake these again, and I'm baking them directly on a piece of paper. This is because the temperature that I bake these at is so low. I find that I can put paper in the oven and it won't catch on fire or anything. It's totally fine. So I'm just gonna take this piece of paper and I'm gonna put it directly in the oven, and I'll come back once these are done. Okay, so I finished baking my 2 polymer clay pieces. So now it's time to attach them on either side of the compact. So in order to do that, I've got this E6000 glue. And I'm just going to use this to attach the polymer clay to the compact. So I'm just going to flip this over, and I'm just going to take some of this glue and I'm just going to spread it out on there. I want to get all the way to the edges to make sure that there aren't any gaps. Okay, so now I'm just gonna put this on my compact here. So I'm gonna make sure, try and line up the design. Make sure it's centered on there. I'm using this little hinge as a guide. Okay, so there we go. Now I'm just gonna let that sit while that glue cures. Usually it takes about 5 minutes for it to really start setting up, and it usually takes 15 to 20 minutes for it to fully cure. So I'm just gonna leave this and let it sit here until that glue is fully cured before I go in and flip it over and put the other side on. So the second compact that I have here, I'm going to decorate using Epoxy Sculpt. So this is how Epoxy Sculpt comes. It comes in 2 parts, and you mix equal parts of both of these, and it turns into kind of a putty that you can sculpt, and it will cure overnight. So we're going to use this on our second compact. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to open this compact and lay it flat on my paper. Now I'm doing this so that I can sculpt the Epoxy Sculpt onto both sides and have them both cure at the same time. If I was working on it like this, I would have to sculpt one side and then wait for it to cure and then turn it over and sculpt the other side. But if I lay it down like this, I can sculpt both sides at the same time. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up my Epoxy Sculpt, and then we'll come back. I've got my Epoxy Sculpt all mixed here. You can see it's nice and uniform. So now it's ready for sculpting. Now I've got a little cup of water here. I'm just gonna leave this nearby. Now I use water to help me smooth the Epoxy Sculpt, but now I'm going to make my design. So I finished up my design here. I'm thinking I'm gonna add some rhinestones later on, but I'm gonna do that after the epoxy sculpt has fully cured. So at this point, I'm going to leave this somewhere to cure, and I'm gonna come back to it tomorrow. So it's several days later, and this compact has fully cured. Everything is nice and solid now. So what I'm gonna do at this point is I'm gonna take some acrylic paint. This is just a random tube of black acrylic paint that I have. And I'm going to paint the compact black. So this will kind of integrate everything together, because right now there's a big contrast between the light gray and the black of the compact. So I'm just going to add some paint here, and I'm just gonna spread it around. So I've got my compact here. The paint has fully dried. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of mica powder just to accentuate the texture that I sculpted on here. So I'm using this iridescent mica powder. It's kind of like a red color, and I'm just gonna apply that to this. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna take a little bit of this DuraClear High Gloss varnish, and I'm just gonna take a little bit of that and put it down on this little acrylic palette that I've got here. And I'm gonna take some of this powder. You can see it's very iridescent. And I'm gonna mix it into that varnish to make sort of like a paint. So we're just gonna mix that up. You can see it's creating like a very iridescent sort of paint. And I'll hold this up so that you can see it. So now I'm gonna apply this to my compact, and it's just gonna bring out this texture a little bit. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of it. So now I'm just gonna wait for that to dry, and then I'll add my finishing touches. So the varnish has fully dried. And now for the final touches, I'm gonna add a couple of these large rhinestones. So these are red rhinestones. They have kind of like a blue in there too as well. But we're gonna add one of these to the center of each side. So I'm just gonna take my E6000 glue again, and I'm just going to add a dot of that on the back of my rhinestone, and I'm just gonna put it down there and just press on it. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the other one. And press down on that as well. And then I'm gonna wait a good 20 minutes or so for these to cure, and then we'll be done. We're going to do the third and final compact. Now for this one, I'm going to be doing some bead embroidery. So I've got a couple pieces of felt here, and I've taken that large cookie cutter that I had before, and I've used a little marker here to trace this cookie cutter onto the felt, and then I've also drawn my pattern onto my felt pieces. So we're going to use this pattern for the beading. I've got one with the nighttime sky with the moon and stars. This one is going to be a sunset, so I don't have any stars or the moon. So I'm going to go ahead and start embroidering these. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I know from watching tutorials that you should put your biggest beads on first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sequin to represent the sun on the sunset side. So I've got this little sequin, and I'm just going to apply that here in the center. And then I also have a whole bunch of little rhinestones. And these are going to be my stars. So I'm going to glue these down, and then I'm going to come back and sew them in place. So you can see here that I've done quite a bit of beading on this. I've encircled each of the stars with circles of gradually darker and darker beads. Now I'm going to take this dark blue down at the bottom where the clouds are, and I'm going to go around all these stars and the moon with that dark blue, and then I'm going to fill in the rest with black. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and come back. I'm doing most of this off of camera because it takes a really long time to work with these beads, and I don't want to have you guys sit there and watch it all because it took forever. It took me probably like 5 or 6 hours to get to this point. So I'm just going to do all of this off camera and come back when I'm done. I'm just going to show you guys quickly the stitch that I'm using to attach the beads to the felt. I've got these really big beads here so that I'm hoping that they'll make it easier for you to see. And then I've got my thread. I'm using a bright red thread. So I've got this little strip of felt here, and I have gone through the bottom and come up. So now I'm facing up this way. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all 4 of these beads, and I'm going to thread them onto my needle. Okay, and now we're going to go back down through the felt. So I'm trying to figure out how long each of these 4 beads are so that I can leave enough space so that they lay flat. So looking at that, I'm going to go down around here, and now I'm just going to pull these guys so that you can see. So I've pulled them down. You can see they're laying flat now. And now I'm just going to go up through the middle, so between the middle 2 beads, and then I'm going to go through the last 2 beads with my needle. So I went up through the middle and then through the last 2, and now I'm just going to pull that through. And then I just string on more beads and do it over and over and over again. Okay, so here's the final piece. You can see I've got all my beads in there. Now I need to cut the felt around this circle. And I need to be really careful when I do that because I need to make sure that I don't cut any of these threads on the back. So this is like the most nerve-wracking part. So I'm gonna go do that and then I'll come back. So here's the final piece of the night sky. You can see I've added a gold edge here with some size 11 gold seed beads that I had. And now I'm going to start on the sunset side. So I've got my piece here. I've attached the sequin in the center by sewing some gold seed beads through the hole in the middle. I just put 3 in the center there. And now I'm going to use some bugle beads. They're kind of these really long, narrow beads. I think these will look good for the rays of the sun. So I'm going to use them in gradually darkening colors as they go out. So I've got all of my bugle beads on. You can see they're really nice and shiny. I really like how they turned out. So I'm gonna add there's some gaps in here where I couldn't put the bugle beads because they were too long. So I'm gonna add some seed beads in there to just kind of cover up those gaps. And then I'm gonna use seed beads on the clouds at the bottom. So I finished the sunset. You can see I used some kind of pearl colored beads for the clouds. And then I used these bugle beads for the sun rays. I also did the same gold edging around the outside that I did on the other nighttime piece. So now I'm going to attach these to my compact. Alright, so I'm just going to take some E6000 glue and I'm going to apply that to the back of each of these and attach them that way. And I'm just going to lay the compact flat so I can do the gluing on both sides. And I'm just going to add some glue here. I do want to make sure that I go all the way out to the edges. Okay, and now I'm gonna put that down. Try to make sure it's pretty well centered on there, which looks like it is. Now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Just gonna add my glue. Okay. And now I'm just gonna take it and I'm gonna push it down on there. Okay. So now I'm just gonna let this sit. I'm gonna let it sit for at least 20 minutes and then we'll be done. So here are the final compacts. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to subscribe, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.